to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joins me as we continue the Metro Division 2022-23 regular season preview. If you missed our part one, we did the Washington Capitals, the New Jersey Devils, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. And this time on the docket to start the show, Carolina Hurricanes, and we're gonna see how many we get through on this show, and as far as the remaining five, maybe we'll have to do a part three, maybe not, but we're gonna start with the Carolina Hurricanes. But before we do that, Justin, hi.
Oh, hi. How's it going?
It's going great. Another a beautiful day out there today. A nice sunny day before. I think this might be our last really hot weekend. It's supposed
that makes me sad.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the mid 80s over the weekend, and then I think it's just going to get a little cooler. Start moving into that perma fall weather, like mid 70s for us up here in Michigan, and it'll be. I personally love the fall. It's my favorite time of year. Gotta be, hands down.
I'm with you because hockey's right.
Yeah.
Hockey starts. So why?
Hockey
why
starts. I mean, you got college football last weekend kicking off. It's just a good time of year for sports. It's a good time of year for the weather because I just don't do super well in the blazing hot. I was out planting cover crops in my fruit forest that I have, and I was melting trying to move mulch around and topsoil.
I sweat too much.
Dude, and you know what? When you're working with dirt and then you sweat, the dirt just cakes. It sits on you and it doesn't go away. You can go and you try to wash it off, and it just is you just smell like dirt until you go take a full-on shower, which I have not done. But that's why I sit alone in my basement and you sit alone there in your office. So we don't have to worry about smelling each other today, which is great. If you were coming over, I would have taken a shower. We'll just say that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And to our listeners, I know you have a very low risk of ever smelling either one of us unless we start doing some smell-o-vision. Is that going to be maybe that'll be Instagram's next thing? Is we've done all the video stuff, we've got all that. Let's make it so that people can smell through their phone or something. Maybe that'll be the next thing. Do you remember smell-o-vision? Did you ever go to that?
No.
It was it was a thing. I think it was more a thing in the 70s or something like that. But there's stuff at Disney World and other places where they still kind of do it, and it's unique but weird. And sometimes you get sprayed with misted with water, or you smell an apple pie as they're making it in the movie. It's kind of cool. But anyways, you're here to hear about hockey, so we're gonna talk Carolina Hurricanes to start. And I think it's fair to say, as we jump into the Hurricanes, that this is the second year in a row where this team has experienced a considerable amount of turnover to the top. I'll say the top part of their roster, the top six, the top four defensemen. Second year in a row, lots of turnover. It didn't affect the Hurricanes last year. They started 9-0. Does it have an effect in 2022-23?
That's a great question, actually. I mean, listen, this team is definitely going to be different again, right? That's the big thing. At least this year, they managed to hold on to their goaltending for another year. So didn't move anybody out. I mean, that one shocked me more than anything. Let's just get rid of our goaltending. Did great in the playoffs. Let's just go ahead and just scorch earth everything. So over $500,000 to
right.
So, and then they end up spending more money anyways on goaltending. So yeah. I mean, listen, this team has got a couple big new names in here, right? The big one, in my opinion, is Brent Burns, right? They've finally got a guy to come in, and he's going to play 20, 25 minutes a night, no problem. But more importantly, I think he's going to fill in that hole left by Tony DeAngelo leaving and heading to Philadelphia.
And I'll say, to an even greater extent, I believe he fills the hole left by Dougie Hamilton when he left via free agency 2 years ago.
Even more so. Yes, sir.
At least from an offensive standpoint. Burns put up 54 points last year. So
yeah, I mean, Tony DeAngelo put up a ton of points and was great, but I mean, let's face it, I don't think you're going to get that all-around game that Brett Burns brings. And granted, he's not the hockey player he once was in his Norris days, but he still brings it every night. He's a great veteran presence, and I think he's going to add a little bit something to this power play, which wasn't bad. I mean, they were 22%, finished 13th in the league, so I expect that number to maybe go up just slightly. And then not only that, but now you've got up front, you've got a guy, granted, starting the year on injured reserve, but Max Pacioretty that you essentially get for free from Vegas for future consideration.
I mean, and Dylan Coughlin.
Right.
I'm not balking at getting Dylan Coughlin for free. He may not be a regular in the lineup with Jake Gardner potentially coming back. Sounds like Gardner will be back this year. So I think it's probably, you're Slavin, Burns, Brady Shea, Piesky, and then Ethan Bear's probably a lock to play most of the games. Pesci, sorry, I don't know why it's Piesky. I have a friend and her last name is Piesky, and so there you go. That's, but yeah, Jake Gardner, you got to think, assuming he's healthy and comes back, like he's going to be an everyday player. So probably Coughlin is a guy that is playing when needed. It would be my assumption, but still, I mean, you grab Pacioretty and a free bottom pairing defenseman for nothing.
Right. And this guy's only 24 years old, so Coughlin still has time to develop, and he could turn out to be a nice middling pair guy for this team in the future, especially considering Brady Shea and Brett Pesci only have 2 years left before UFA status, so you might lose one of them. You might lose both, hopefully not. But we'll see how that turns out. And then and then speaking of, facelifts and changes to this roster up front too, the other big one that they, unfortunately lost was Vincent Trocheck. He went over to the Rangers and to replace Ryan Strome there. And I don't blame Carolina for not wanting to give him 7 years at his age. And, yes, that's going to be a little risky for the Rangers and, might pay off initially, but in the long term might be a little bit of a risk. That's to be determined later, but this team certainly does have quite a bit of young talent looking to make a move, right? You've got guys like Kokeniemi that they've given a long-term extension to that they expect to take another step. You've got Martin Nicias, who we've heard his name floating on the trade block a couple times, so here's an opportunity for a guy like that to step up. And then they go out and they get another guy who I think was probably one of the best value signings this offseason, granted a little bit later in the offseason. Paul Stastny comes in at a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. And to me, this is a guy who can both play on the wing, play at center, and he can slot anywhere basically in your middle six and give you production. I mean, he had a very productive year last year. Close to 50 points for a guy that was playing on a mediocre Jets team? I mean, 45 points and 71 games.
Goals. 21 goals, too, for a 35-year-old. He was a great pickup, especially at $1.5 million.
No risk.
No risk at all. Yeah. There's one player that I do wonder if the Hurricanes are going to miss him more than even Trocheck. I wonder if the Hurricanes miss Nino Niederreiter.
Sure.
Nino Niederreiter was fantastic for them, and he played on the most consistent line for that team. Niederreiter played with Jordan Stahl and Jesper Fast, and that line was murderous in terms of their ability to keep the puck, keep possession. That line, they played 53 games they played together for 533 minutes total. The next line in terms of playing together the most was Nicias, Trocheck, and Svechnikov playing 214 minutes. So more than double the amount of time played together. So, I mean, that was their most consistent line. I mean, you look at 34 goals for, 13 against. Their Fenwick and Corsi were both above 59. They were a possession hog, and what that does for the rest of that lineup, when you can send those guys out and they can just have the puck in the offensive zone, wearing down defenses, and scoring goals in bunches as well. I mean, they were their highest scoring line as line pairing. I mean, that's just something you're going to miss.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, right? But what I will say in Carolina's defense, I think they've got such a great system that not necessarily they can plug anybody in there, but they can definitely get some mediocre talent and make them a little bit better than maybe what they actually are, right? So for a guy like, in my opinion, Paul Stastny, right, he's a great middle six guy, but he might turn out to be even better than he was last year coming into a system like this where he's very responsible on both ends of the ice, both offensively and defensively. So he's going to fit in very, very well with this team, and maybe he slides into that number 2 center spot and doesn't have to face the opposition's top lines. Obviously, that's Jordan Stahl's job, but then you can also put Sebastian Aho out there against maybe their second best offensive units. So a guy like Paul Stastny can go out there and play minutes against teams' third lines, third pairings, and doesn't really have to worry about having those matchups, and can seem like a more consistent offensive and defensive player that way. So I mean, again, I think this team's going to be all right. I think they've got plenty of talent here, and then the great thing is come trade deadline time, you're going to get Max Pacioretty back basically as your trade acquisition
Sure.
pickup.
Yeah, exactly.
And add a whole new level to this team as far as scoring is concerned.
Yeah, when he is dropped into this lineup, it's going to be a much scarier, especially if he stays healthy, if he's as productive as he was. I would agree that they, of course, I mean, Carolina's offense was really good last year. I mean, really their defense was tops in the league, I believe, number 1 in goals against in the NHL. You add even just like these subtle moves like Andre Kasha. If he can stay healthy for the first time ever, he's a good pickup. I mean, he was good for the Leafs when he was healthy, putting up more than a point every other game. I think he's a nice player to have down there. They have lots and lots of depth to where they could essentially afford to lose a Trocheck and still be in a position to compete. My biggest question is going to be, can Jesperi Kotkaniemi actually play center? Because even last year, he didn't necessarily prove that he's you've sold me on him being a center. He played with a lot of different players. He played on the wing a lot. He played at center. So there's still those question marks for me. And that is a big hole if your second line center just, he only put up 29 points. But he was only playing 12 minutes a game.
Right. He hasn't sold me on being a top 6 guy, but he's getting paid like he is. So
yeah. He's got to be playing more than 12 minutes a game. I mean, I'll say in his defense, it's hard to get into a game when you're that type of player. It's hard to get into it when you're only playing 12 minutes a game. That's not much. That's very much third line minutes, which I suppose maybe they were sheltering him and trying to get him to learn the system a little bit more. But goaltending. We haven't really talked too much goaltending yet. We saw Frederik Andersen do what Frederik Andersen does best, and that's get injured right as the regular season is ending, and that left Antti Ranta, and Ranta was not by any means, I don't think he was really the reason that they lost. They didn't win with him though, and you got to ask the question: do you think Frederik Andersen can stay healthy enough to go into the playoffs and be their starter? In my mind, he is the better goaltender for sure. He's the better goaltender. Can he stay healthy?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Well, I mean, I should say $4.5 million question. And, I think this being a contract year for him too, right? His health is really going to determine what kind of extension he gets from Carolina, if any at all. And so, if you have a guy who consistently is injured and injured in the worst possible times, if you're Carolina, why would you want to re-sign a guy like this? Granted, yes, when he's healthy, he's probably top 7, top 8 goaltender, in the league, but that doesn't help you when you're hurt all the time, right? So, go spend your money elsewhere.
He did play 52 games. It's not like he only got in 38 games or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely not.
He played 52, but I think that maybe that number needs to be lower. And I don't think it's I do. Antti Ranta was injured in the beginning of the year, was it? Was he injured? I feel like he was injured at some point.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, but, he really, his stats in the playoffs were very comparable to Frederik Andersen's in the regular season. Yeah, so he did elevate himself to essentially Andersen-level stats. For the playoffs, Carolina just kind of has to... Carolina's in this weird spot where they have lots of depth scoring. They're a lot like St. Louis in some respects. Lots of depth scoring. They've got plenty of guys who can score a whole bunch of goals. But maybe they don't have that superstar. Like, they don't have anybody that's going to put up the 100 points or, like really take over a game the way that some other teams in this division have. It's not that Sebastian Aho is a bad player, but I mean, I'll take him on my team any day. But Sebastian Aho is not Artemi Panarin. He's not Sidney Crosby or even I don't even know if I would put him. I guess I'd put him in the same category as like Matthew Barzal, right? Like not necessarily similar in the way that they play, but similar in the way that they in their rank, like their categorical ranking of superstar, maybe that notch below a superstar. So I just don't know if ultimately they have the personnel to elevate them come playoff time. And that's always going to be the question, like, to help them to win the cup. I don't doubt whether this team can win rounds or, but it's whether they can win the cup with the team that they have.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've talked about in some of our, end of the season wrap-up shows is, to me, the one thing missing from this Carolina team was a goal scorer who can just take over the game, right? A superstar. Now, when you talk about Sebastian Aho, to me, he is a star in this league. I pretty much put him on the same level, kind of as far as what he does on both the offensive and defensive side of the puck. I compare him to a John Tavares, right? He's very, very good in the faceoff circle, brings a great two-way game, and can still put up about a point per game. I mean, you look at his numbers. He's been super consistent the last, few years, minus one little season, little hiccup. But, for the most part, I think this team, hopes that they found that in Matt Pacioretty, a guy who can come in, when they're in the playoff hunt, they're, down that stretch or maybe, in that grind of a 7-game series and, their top line goes stale, right? Maybe Seth Jarvis, being a 20-year-old, just doesn't bring in the playoffs, or, Kotkaniemi is just, a wash at this point. So they need a guy to step up and score some goals, and you just can't rely on Sebastian Aho all the time to do that for you. So,
or Svechnikov, yeah.
Right, exactly. And so, Max Pacioretty hopefully is that guy for them.
Right. He can be that second line, that extra threat that you throw over, the other guys come off and he comes on. And of course, who you're looking at and you're like, well, yes, I would rather have Max Pacioretty over Martin Necas. Like, it's not a knock on Necas, but Pacioretty could score 30, 35 goals. Necas, maybe his ceiling's a 20-goal scorer. So I think that'll be certainly an upgrade. You also have to think Seth Jarvis is going to take another step here. He had a fantastic rookie season, 17 goals in 68 games for 40 points. He had a decent playoff, 8 points in 14 games. No one's knocking him for the playoffs that he had in terms of his production. But he's only going to get better here. I mean, he's only 20 years old. I would expect that he's going to top 20 goals. I would assume that he's going to top 25 goals here and really kind of cement himself as that the winger for Sebastian Aho and playing opposite side of Svechnikov. And you've got a pretty dangerous top line there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you probably want to go with Svechnikov, Aho, and Jarvis to start the year. Now, whether they last the whole season that way is another story, because to me, I think Svechnikov is some guy, somebody you can drop down in your second line, give you a little bit more scoring flexibility. Maybe you bring up a guy like, Andre Kasha, Teravainen, maybe even Kotkaniemi, put him on that wing with Aho, and you give, Stastny a look at that second line center spot. But regardless, there's flexibility there now that maybe they didn't have before, because now they have another established winger who can, dish the puck, score a couple goals here. So I think a full season of Jarvis, I expect him to take, like you said, another step forward and potentially be that 25 goal scorer that, maybe puts up close to 70 points this year.
Yeah, I mean, is there a world in which Seth Jarvis drops 30 goals? Yeah, where that whole top line, they all have 30 goals at the end of the year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, especially since you're going to need to find some extra offense here in the first. Pacioretty's out to what, February?
Yeah, pretty close to it. Yeah.
So 4 or 5 months of the beginning of the season, the bulk of the season, they're going to really be relying on that top line more so than come playoff time when they'll get some air support from Pacioretty. Any other? Let's do our. If you missed the first show, rather than trying to give predictions on, hey, this team's going to make the playoffs. I think we can all agree Carolina is going to make the playoffs. This is a almost guarantee playoff team here, but we wanted to give our ceiling and our floor for where we think these teams will end up. We're not giving our basement. We're not like, well, if they have injuries, then they'll miss the playoffs entirely. Well, of course, any team could suffer a crazy amount of injuries and miss the playoffs. But we're given our reasonable ceiling and a floor. Justin, where do you have the Hurricanes at for this season?
Yeah, I'll start with the ceiling here. I think for me, it's a Stanley Cup win. I think this team, again, assuming everybody's healthy and back, I think with a full healthy, Freddie Anderson, Max Pacioretty in there, and Sebastian Aho at center, I think you've got enough talent, great coaching. You've got a fantastic defense that never gets enough credit, in my opinion. To be one of the top defenses in the league here, where they can really go on a nice run, and I think they would have a really good shot at winning the Stanley Cup. Now, on the opposite end with my basement, as far as where I see this team, I see them probably as a second round, loss. I think, whomever they have to play in the first round, I think they could probably, take on your Bostons, your New York Islanders, and get through that first round, no problem. Now, when you get to the second round, and maybe you have to match up against the Rangers, Pittsburgh again, that's where you could probably run into some trouble if guys start, start having dry spells and you just don't have enough, scoring depth. Maybe Andre Kasha's not doing it on your third line. Kokaniemi's just, not what we are thinking, or not what Carolina thinks he could be. So this could dry up real quick for them in the second round.
Yeah, I'll go. My ceiling is probably somewhere in the conference finals. Not that they couldn't win in the conference finals. I just don't think that they have that next level at any position. They don't have that superstar, and I think that's pretty superstar. They couldn't get past the New York Rangers. Why? They didn't have the goal scoring to score on Shesterkin. Now, I'll say very few teams do, but that is going to be that's maybe for the next 5 years. That's going to be the measuring stick to which all Metro teams have to use to measure. Can we score enough goals on Shesterkin in 7 games to beat them? I mean, it's a legitimate question, especially since the Rangers' offense it's seemingly improving as we move along here, and as their kids develop, and Panarin and Kreider. Panarin just makes everybody so good around him. There's no guarantee that Carolina wins the division. So in the first round, you might be up against the Rangers. You might be up against the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Washington Capitals. Now, I think, to me, the ceiling, they could go to the conference finals. The base, the floor is, if they have to play the Rangers in the first round, that's a tough out. But if you get to play most other teams, I think that they beat Pittsburgh, they beat Washington. I think they beat every other team in here except for the Rangers. To me, the Rangers is just going to be tough for them to get past. And shoot, Pittsburgh, man, they're so good though. Pittsburgh is underrated, I think, coming in here. They've just lost so many times in the first round. You wonder do they have another run in them? But anyways, I back to what I'm saying. My ceiling's probably the conference finals for this team again, unless they maybe add. I mean, they add Pacioretty. I guess I have to kind of see how he plays for them and how healthy he really is when he comes back. But I'm saying conference finals, and then the floor is losing in 7 games in the first round to whomever they play.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, right? The Rangers are going to be the measuring stick, and that could be a really good reason why you lose in the first round. So that's why I think, second round, I think, you're going to have the Rangers or Carolina finish first in this division. So I think that's why I feel like if they're going to lose to anybody, it's in the second round against the Rangers. So.
That's fair. I also like I'm looking at the conference finals. I'm going, well, that's either probably going to be Tampa, Toronto, Florida, or Boston. Unlikely Boston. Tampa, Toronto, Florida are probably your most likely bets in the Atlantic to make it to the conference finals. And once again, you're looking at that Hurricanes team and how they match up, and you wonder if they have the high level talent to get past those teams. And then even if they do, you've got either Edmonton or Colorado breathing down your neck coming at you in the next round.
I will say this, though. I would love to see a Toronto-Carolina conference final with a healthy Freddie Anderson in there and see what happens.
As long as the Leafs win, I'd love to see that. Well, no, at least that means the Leafs won a playoff round. Okay, where should we go next?
You just mentioned the team. I say let's head over to Pittsburgh.
Okay, let's head over to Pittsburgh. I wish we had some some in between music that was I don't know, like
Transition.
Frank Sinatra singing about Pittsburgh or something. Some Steel City. I don't know. Never heard of that. I just made that.
It sounded great,
but I wish we had that. Maybe I'll write that song tonight. That's my goal. All right. Well, I'll let you get us started on the Penguins.
Oh, Pittsburgh. Where do we start? I mean, obviously the first place to start is re-signing, right? The two of the big three there. When you somehow manage to get Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang signed. The way they did was just spectacular. I mean, I'll tip my cap to Ron Hextall for doing that because, to be frank, I honestly thought Evgeny Malkin's walking. I think he's going to Washington. That's what I said all season long or all off season long because I realistically did not see this team having the money to keep both of them. I mean, really, when you have to choose between Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin, right, you don't have that number one defenseman to replace Letang, and you could find somebody to fill in at the number 2 center spot if you really wanted to. I.e. your Vincent Trocheck's or whomever. So, the bigger loss would have been Letang. And so clearly that's what they thought too. They get him signed first, but they ended up giving out maybe a year or two more to each one of these guys than I think they probably would have liked to, but that's what it took to get it done, right? That's the focus. And so now you have your big three back. These guys will have been playing together for 45 years by the time their careers are over. and then, you know what? Speaking of defense, you go out, you make a trade, you move, Marino out, you bring in Jeff Petrie, you bring in Ty Smith, you make some moves to bring in a Jan Ruda, and you bring in this whole new defense core basically to surround Chris Letang with because you want to make one more run at it, right? I mean, that's the goal. Malkin and Crosby are getting up there; they're 35 and 36 each, and so. How many, let's be honest, how many quality years are you going to have left? I think Sidney Crosby's still an amazing talent. I would still take him as a top 10 centerman in this league all day long, but, at some point he's going to start slowing down. And so I don't know, maybe he's one of those, those guys that can still bring it into their 40s, no problem. And, I hope that's the case because, I don't ever want to have to see the day where the game leaves Crosby before Crosby leaves the game. So, and then of course we've got Jake Gensel still here. Brian Rust, they managed to re-sign him too. Maybe a couple more dollars than I would have preferred to give him. But, again, that's what happens when you want to make another run at it, right? You end up overpaying some guys and give them a year or two more than maybe you would have because you just say, hey, you know what? We're throwing all of our cards, all of our chips in. We're showing our hand here, and we're making a run. And it's very clear now. What I will say about this window is it could be cut very, very short if they don't figure out how to get Tristan Jarry re-signed here. But I guess that's a discussion for the offseason next year. But for now, this team looks like they're still ready and able to compete.
Yeah, I mean, for who cares about 5 years from now? No one you care about right now and what you can do. I'm excited to see a full season of Rickard Rakell for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that he played pretty decent when he came there from Anaheim, and I think a full season he signs a big deal in 6 year $5 million a pop. So he had 13 points in 19 games there. You maybe are looking for even better once you develop that chemistry. If you look at when there were 8 games there down the stretch where Getzel, Crosby, and Rakell were playing together 5-on-5, and they outscored their opponents 9-1 in those games, which is pretty darn significant. All their possession numbers were really high. They played almost 90 minutes together and scored 9 goals. So very productive. I'm hoping that we see that. I know that Russ tends to play with the two of them, but in reality, throughout the entire year, they played over 500 minutes together, and while they were in the positive of possession, they still weren't world beaters. 51.62 on the Corsi, but 25 goals for and 20 against for that quote unquote top line for the Penguins in a 5-on-5 situation isn't phenomenal. You'd like to see a much wider gap in your goals for and against. And I think that they should hopefully move Rickard Rakell up there and see what kind of damage he can do, and see if Rakell can, maybe get back to that 30 goal score. You know what? It's been a minute since he scored 30 goals, but that's the last time he even scored 20 was 2017-18. Is this year that? Oh well, I guess I'm sorry. He did score 20 goals this last year, just for 2 different teams. Do we see Rickard Rakell getting up in that 25 to 30 goals this year?
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question.
Playing for a good offensive team, right?
Right, Crosby or Malkin. I mean, I think the possibility is there for sure. I mean, you've seen what Crosby has done for a Brian Rust here, and what Malkin can do for some wingers. So it's more than possible. Rickard Rakell has just a resurgence and a fantastic year. Yeah,
the one player that I have some big question marks about, Jason Zucker.
Yes.
He has not been the player that I think they thought they were getting. Obviously, he's been injured. He really has only played in 3 seasons, albeit shortened. He did play all 15 games at the trade deadline when he was traded to Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh was subsequently swept in that first round that year. But he only played 38 in 2021 and then 41 last year, and did not score a goal in the playoffs this last year either. So definitely low expectations coming in, but it is a contract year. He has shown that he can score goals in the past. He's same year that Rickard Rakell scored 30, Jason Zucker had 33. So you wonder if he can find his goal scoring touch again, or does Pittsburgh try to offload him to someone in the hopes of bringing in more offense up front? Like this, in my mind, the Penguins have to go for it this year. Like I don't know how many years they're going to have where they're going to be Stanley Cup contenders. I think they still are. Tristan Jarry is a UFA at the end of this year. It's time to go for it. And I wonder if Zucker is moved in order to bring in a bigger name.
It's possible.
A bigger actual goal scorer, not a goal scorer from 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean that's more than possible, right? Because again, like you mentioned, they're throwing it all in. They're trying to win now, right? So they've still got their first and second round picks for the next 3 years to do so. So they've got capital to make that push. And if you can move Zucker's contract at 5.5, you can create enough cap space to bring in just about anybody at that point. Because let's face it, throughout the course of the year, guys are going to get injured, and you'll free up $1 million or $2 in
sure.
LTIR money. But you know what? I think more realistically, at least at the beginning of the season, one name I'd like to keep an eye on for Penguin fans, and came over in a trade from Chicago, is Alexander Nylander, a guy who at 24 years old, he's pretty much should be developed at this point, but 30 points in 44 games for the Scranton Penguins there in the AHL. I think he has an opportunity to come in at camp and prove he belongs in this league still. I mean, he had one full season with Chicago back in 1920 and put up 26 points, but hey, he can come in and he could potentially push for a third line spot on the wing there. I think he still has enough offensive upside, drafted 8 overall for a reason, in 2016. So
sure.
He could be someone that could potentially push for a spot there, and maybe make a case to say, hey, you know what, here, go ahead and trade Jason Zucker now because you've got me.
Yeah, the bottom of Pittsburgh's lineup is definitely not also like set in stone by any means. Danton Heinen is probably the only one that you're looking at saying, yeah, I mean he'll make the team. He had a nice year last year too.
And I'd throw Teddy Bluger's name in there. He's going to take the fourth line center spot.
Yeah. I don't think that Drew O'Connor's a lock to be on that fourth line. There's all sorts of players that could be shifted around, and so we'll see what the Penguins' bottom half of their line. That's probably the bigger question. Like you look at Kasperi Kapanen, can he have a bounce back year? He only had 11 goals. I think the Penguins have been expecting more of him coming over from Toronto. He had a 20-goal season, and then 13 in a shortened season, and then he just can't seem to get past that 11-goal mark, which he scored twice for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he's only has 1 goal in the playoffs in 13 games. To me, he's one of your big, like him, Zucker. There's been some players who have underperformed here, and it's time to figure out, like, either is there something there, or do they need to move on from these guys and bring someone else in? I think that's the biggest question marks, because those, what you're going to get from Crosby, what you're getting from Malkin and from Getzel. It's going to be those guys down in the lineup, because look what happened to the Penguins when Crosby got hurt in the playoffs. If they were going to win that series and then he got hurt, like, I'm convinced they would have won that series. He gets hurt and they just could not figure it out. They could not do it after he got hurt. And it's troubling when, if one player goes out, it's almost like, well, no chance.
Right.
No chance. So
yeah, I will say this though, next season they've got nearly $20 million in projected cap space now. If they re-sign Tristan Jarry, that could eat up a good chunk or a third of that. But still, they're
going to sign Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it doesn't work out this season, they've got some room to bring in a big star name if they want to. But
yeah, that's what I hear. Nathan McKinnon wants to play with his old buddy Sidney Crosby. They want to get the Cole Harbor boys together for one hurrah in Pittsburgh.
Oh goodness.
Okay. Well, tell me what do you think ceiling and floor for this team?
Yeah, ceiling for this team, I think, is just getting to the second round. I really have a tough time thinking that they can go much further than that, just because when you talk, we've mentioned it, the lack of scoring outside of Jeff Carter on that bottom six, right? It's really difficult when you start getting into that grind, that second round, where teams rely on a lot more depth to assist with the scoring, and they might get lucky and they might finish third or second and get a matchup against somebody that's a little bit favorable, and who knows, maybe they play the Rangers again and somehow manage to beat them this time. But regardless, after that, then you've got to play a Carolina or Ranger team again. And so to me, I don't know if they have enough firepower to get past that, given what these other teams have also added, in Carolina and the Rangers. So to me, their ceiling to me is the second round. As far as the bottom is concerned, I think literally it could be a Stanley Cup playoff miss, right? They're just on the outside by a couple points. We've talked about Columbus improving with Johnny Gaudreau and, Patrick Laine in there, maybe Kent Johnson. The Islanders rebounding the second half of the season. Maybe they continue that resurgence throughout the entire year instead of half the year. And, maybe they push a team like Pittsburgh out the door. Okay.
That wouldn't be my basement. I think this is a playoff team all the way. Maybe a wild card, but I think that they're a playoff team. I think this is one of those teams where all they got to do is just get in. If Pittsburgh gets in and can stay healthy, I think they have a very high ceiling because of their experience and their high level of play. I can see them going to the conference finals. I don't know if I can see them getting past there. That's my if they are healthy, this team could go to the conference finals. But if even if it's just like a moderate kind of health thing, I still think their floor is making the playoffs and just losing in a good first round.
Sure.
But there is a world now when I think when it's fair to say that we give our ceiling, we give our floor. Of course, there's always the brutal season where just shit hits the fan and hey, you miss the playoffs and you got to kind of reset. But there also is Pittsburgh not that they're one of the few teams that are in that they could miss there's a world where they could miss the playoffs, but there's also a world where they could win the Stanley Cup. They have the team, they have the horses to do it, the experience, the goal scoring, that superstar level. If Malkin and Crosby can reach into the past just a little bit for 25 games, they could win the Stanley Cup, but they could also miss the playoffs. And that's what's so interesting about this team. Is that they remind me a lot of I'll say 2010 Detroit Red Wings. This team could win the cup, but they could also not and lose in the first round. They remind me a lot of the Wings. Right. They remind me a lot of the Red Wings, where they've got the talent to go do it. It's a matter of maybe some of it is, hey, they've done it so many times. They don't really, I'm not trying to say they don't care, but they maybe aren't as hungry as other teams who have never been there, or other players who have never been there. Requires a different level of motivation. So, and maybe one that there's a reason why you don't see too many teams win the Stanley Cup and then win it again later. The Penguins did that, but to go do it again would be, I think, probably unlike anything we've ever seen. So it's very unlikely in my mind that they ever go back and win the cup with this group. But they are the one group of players in this category that still have the potential to win a cup if a lot of things go right.
Sure.
And Tristan Jarry, we didn't even talk about Tristan Jarry much, or the kind of the swap out on defense with Jeff Petrie coming in there too. But Tristan Jarry, I think, is probably going to be maybe even better this year, and hopefully not get hurt right at playoff time and pull a Freddie Anderson, and then the Penguins. Had he been healthy, I think the Penguins probably skate pretty easily past the Rangers in that first round, the way that they played. So that's the Penguins maybe are the hardest team to nail down where they will ultimately fall. For me.
Fair.
Okay. Well, let's go to I'll say the New York Islanders, since we were wondering if did we do the New York Islanders? And we were texting earlier. Did we do the Islanders? No, we did not. And so we're going to do them right now. The Islanders they were in the conference final and then they missed the playoffs this past year. I think it was 13 straight games to start the season on the road. Then they got hit with COVID. And that's enough for me to say, let's just write this one off, get a tax break, and let's come back next year with the same exact team. The same exact team. I don't know if I would have done that, Lou Lamoriello, outside of Alexander Romanov, but here we are. the 2021-22 New York Islanders, the exact same team coming back for this year. What do you think of the Islanders coming into this season?
Boy, yeah, I'm with you. I just kind of write off last year because you saw it down the stretch, right? They were playing some pretty good hockey.
With nothing to lose, yeah.
Right, yeah, with nothing to lose. That's exactly how it usually goes, right? Listen, I don't necessarily agree with Lou, and I like what you said there, where they just decided to come back with the exact same team now.
Oh, minus the head coach. Sorry, minus the best coach in hockey.
We need a new voice, so we're going to go ahead and bring in the head coach's former assistant for years and years and years. So yeah, there's no chance he's going to bring in the exact same doctrine or mentality, right? It's going to be completely different. So nuts to that. You're going to get the same coaching that you pretty much got, maybe minus a few tweaks here and there, but for the most part, I don't think you can do better than Barry Trotz anyways, so good luck. And that might ultimately be what, determines how this season goes for this team. I still think they have enough decent talent up front. They tried, from what I understand, to bring in Nazem Kadri. I'm sure they made a run at Johnny Gaudreau, but obviously they just don't have the cap because they decided to give all these middle six players a bunch of $5 and $6 million contracts for 20 years. And suddenly they wonder why we don't have any cap space, right? Let's go trade for J.G. Pajot and wonder why.
Not a bad player to trade for at the deadline when he was making.
Absolutely.
I think he was making $3.1 million a year. That's a great cap hit for a guy who's putting up. That year he put up 40
points,
42 points, 26 goals though. So hey, he's a goal scorer. That's fine. Just not worth. He's. I'll say he's barely a 40 point player. Barely.
Right. But here's the thing, though. On your depth chart, right, you've got Brock Nelson and Matthew Barzal already there, who are established 1 and 2 guys for your center depth. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, let's go out and overpay for a guy who's traditionally been a top 6 guy and hope that he still produces with reduced minutes, right?
Yeah, he should be making more, probably like 3.8, maybe 4, 4
right.
Is a free, but
so it's no wonder why he hasn't really taken that next step or really played to that contract's potential. So again, it's just what's going to give, who's going to take that next step, and really with everybody being so damn old, really the only guy to look to is Matthew Barzal, right? Is he going to take that next leap? But the problem is he's had no one to play on the wing with him, right? That was the concern and the question mark, and really why they try to go out and try to land a big name free agent so they could find somebody to play on the wing with him, but they don't have anybody.
Right. Yeah, I when you said that thing about being old, it made me just think of the country song "I'm much too young to be this damn old." I think that's how the Islanders feel. They're older. And it's not like the Pittsburgh Penguins older. They're actually, their top players are a little younger than Crosby and Malkin, but nowhere near the talent level, nowhere near the impact on the ice. And it just, a lot of the moves that they made, like, for example, Kyle Palmieri, bringing him in and paying him another, what's he made? Kyle Palmieri's at $5 million. And when they signed him to that deal, he had only scored 10 goals that year. The year before, right. It's not as if he was 2 years removed from a 25 goal season, 3 from a 27. He was a very consistent player. He had 5 seasons in a row of 24 or more goals. That's fine, but then he goes and he puts up a 10 goal season, 21 points, and you say, no, we got to pay him. We got to pay him $5 million. No, you should have paid him 3 again, or let someone else pay him 5, and it's coming back to bite them, because if they had done that, they would have Nazem Kadri, or they would have Johnny Gaudreau, who makes an actual impact on the ice in a huge way, makes players around him better. Whereas Palmieri is a secondary guy. He's somebody who needs someone so that he can complement them. He's not the guy. He's the complementary piece. Same with J.G. Pajot. really, I guess in some respects, you can say, well, Anders Lee. I mean, Anders Lee is only a 50-point guy barely, and he's making $7 million. I
know he's got intangibles, but still. I
actually as we're doing the research for this division, and I'm going to just jump kind of right into that conversation of the basement and the ceiling, because the Islanders did so little in the offseason that everyone knows this team. If you've been around watching hockey for the last 18 months, you know this team. This is the same exact team plus Alexander Romanov. I look at this and I just go, I don't see a world in which the Islanders make the playoffs. So let's just go ahead there and say my ceiling for this team is not even making the playoffs. I don't think they're a playoff team in this division. Frankly, I don't think there's a division in the NHL where they make the playoffs. I don't think they're a wild card. I just don't see it. And I think that their floor is actually pretty darn close to the last place in the NHL, minus Arizona, and you're like we're gonna purposely lose. Maybe the Chicago Blackhawks, you toss them in there. Like they're that clip above them. I don't think they're going to be in playoff contention. I don't think that they're going to be in contention for dead last, but I think that they're going to be, I guess probably finish somewhere pretty similar to where they finished last year, and that is very much in the basement. I guess last year they had 84 points. I think that they'll be 6th in this division, 7th. So I think they fall.
Wow.
And that's my floor. I really think there is a world in which this is the worst team in this division.
Yeah, I mean that's possible, right? But so here's the thing: when you look at every other team around them that was below them in the standings, right? Columbus, New Jersey, and Philly. Granted, maybe Philly not getting better, but New Jersey, Columbus have all improved, in my opinion. And so there's two teams that could easily jump the Islanders, assuming that again that they are improving. Now, the one saving grace I will say is, I really like this defense. I think they have a quality top six. And they managed to steal Noah Dobson to a $4 million contract. I figured he was probably going to get closer to $6 million. But again, great quality young guy. I don't understand why they decided to give up a first rounder for Romanov, but hey, whatever. That's he's 22 years old, so maybe they felt like it was worth it. But more than anything else, right? You got the good defense. You have, in my opinion, the best tandem goaltending in this league right now. Because to me, Sorokin is going to be a top 3, top 4 goaltender in this league next year. And Semyon Varlamov, to me, if he's on another team as a starter, he's potentially a top 10 starter in almost any other team outside of like Seattle, Arizona, and those bottom feeder teams. So, he could go to a team, like Colorado when they were looking for a goaltender. He could walk in there and be, easily top 10, no problem. So, to me, I think he's still a quality goaltender at 34, and especially with, that contract year here, he's going to, maybe not get as many games as he would like to get in, but I still think he's going to go out and put up some pretty good numbers. But to me, it comes down to goal scoring, right? I just don't think they have enough up front.
That's
outside
exactly
of Barzell.
It. You can have great goaltending. You can't put the puck in the net. You're not going to win.
Right, exactly. They're going to finish towards the bottom of the league in goal scoring. And, when you're relying on guys like Kyle Palmieri, Brock Nelson to score goals for you, it's just not going to work out, in my opinion. And so that's why I think, especially when you have an inexperienced head coach, a guy who's only been assistant, no head coaching experience, really, like this, I think it's going to be a tough uphill climb for him. And it's just going to, I think, not necessarily blow up in his face, but I don't think it's going to go the way anybody thought it would.
Yeah. And when you look at goal scoring, I think the only teams that, like Vegas and Columbus, they both missed the playoffs and were in the top 16 of goal scoring. Boston and the Rangers were a couple, and then the LA and Dallas were out of that too, out of the tops. In terms of goal scoring it's just so important to be able to score goals. Like very few teams get to not score a lot of goals and still make the playoffs. It just doesn't happen very often. So you got to think, man, can the Islanders score more goals than 230 like they did last year? I mean, they were just so bad, minus 82 goals, and that's with the great goaltending tandem. It's not like the tandem was different last year. That's with this great tandem, and I don't see where where it matters because they just aren't going to be able to score goals. I don't think that anyone on this team is all of a sudden just going to become a great goal scorer again. I mean, I could be wrong, and maybe Lane Lambert just opens everything up and lets everyone do their thing. I have to think that there will be a little bit looser reins in terms of defensively, where they can kind of try some things. But let's be honest, it's not like Matthew Barzal is just a crazy goal scorer. No, he was setting guys up. In 17-18, when he had 22 goals and 85 points, his best season, which was his rookie season. I mean, he hasn't scored 20 goals ever since the first year. No, and in fairness, in the COVID year, he would have scored 20. He has scored at a higher clip in 1920 and in 2021. He had 19 goals in 68 games and 17 in 55. So he did score at a 20-goal pace, but He's not a goal scorer. That's not he's a setup man. And there's just not really any pure goal scorers on this team anymore. Some of these, like Palmieri, was a goal scorer. He's not. He's a top 9. Throw him on your third line, maybe on your second line. He'll get you 20 goals. But he's not someone who's moving the needle greatly in one direction. Brock Nelson can score a few goals, but no one's putting up, outside of Barzal, no one's going to put up a point per game. And there's just not a whole lot where you're like, ooh, yeah, we're excited to go and watch this guy play. Outside of Barzal, there's really no one. And that was the beauty of Barry Trotz, is that he was able to, hey, we don't have a whole lot here. Remember, they defensively, they were terrible, and he came in, changed them, and they were a really good team in the first year that he came in. And the problem is, I just don't think you can do that forever. And they really haven't changed their personnel to try and score some goals. They have their personnel set up to, hey, let's grind other teams down, and we'll try to win these low-scoring games. And I don't think that's going to work anymore. It's just not. You've got to be able to score goals in this league now. And
yep, that's why I'm going to say my ceiling is wild card team at best. And honestly, I'm with you, right? I think they finish second to last in this division as far as the basement's concerned.
Okay. Sorry, I was just taking a drink.
No, I appreciate it.
I thought you were going to talk longer. Okay. Well, that's, we're at an hour, so we're just going to, that's going to be our last team for today. And the last two teams in our Metropolitan division, the Philadelphia Flyers. And wait, do we only have one left?
No, we got the Rangers too.
Oh, we haven't done the Rangers yet. Okay, so we'll do a New York Rangers Philadelphia Flyers show, and then we'll probably do a couple teams from another division as a separate show. I have 2 shows in a week or something like that. But anyways, we'll keep chugging through these teams as we near training camp. I was looking at it as like 20 or 19 days until the first preseason game, something like that.
Yeah, we gotta get going on these division previews.
We are getting close. Yeah, we got to maybe move a little quicker, but it's fine by me. We'll just have to do 3-hour shows and just do the whole division.
Beautiful.
So, all right. Well, that's part 2 of the Metro division. Go back, listen to part 1. Look forward to part 2. Find us on Twitter, Instagram at OT Hockey Talk. And Justin, hope you have a great evening. To our listeners, thanks for being here, and we will talk to you guys soon.